Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lads Discuss Horror? It's a working title. I am actually joined here with, guess who? Jaru.
I'm not dead yet.
So, welcome back to the channel, Jaru.
It's good to be here.
See, people, we both don't have a beef, especially since I fired him. If people actually take that seriously, I never actually fired him. It's just a running joke that I just fire anyone who's on it, even though they don't really work for me. They're just more just being nice and hanging out with me.
Bro, it's been like I've had so much drama in real life that I've totally forgotten any and all internet drama. It's like, whatever, man. Past is forgiven if there was any.
We never had drama. It was just more the fact that, it's a topic
Yeah,
for another time.
true. So, what are we talking about today?
Well, for the first of Bill and Jared's Discuss Monsters, I guess that's something we spoke about, but we're not sure we're going to do. It's still in development. Resident Evil 3 Remake was recently. I guess not really recently. It's a while ago now. They had its 1 year anniversary, and lately its player base has even increased, which was a bit of a shock to me. And since that was kind of my first ever Let's Play on my channel, I want to talk about this game, especially since I have replayed it after my Let's Play, and I have some things I actually really started to like about it, and some things I was a bit meh on. But I feel like to talk about this game, we have to talk about the first remake that came out before it, Resident Evil 2's remake, because
Although technically RE1 did get a remake first.
Did play that.
Although it's kind of funny because the first remake came out so much old. It's like so much older than the other remakes.
Really?
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure RE1 remake came out before RE4.
Wow.
I could be wrong on that. I'd
that
have
was
to
during
check
the
the
GameCube
timeline,
era,
but
though, wasn't it?
yeah, it's old.
I really thought it was like maybe 4 years ago. Except, I mean, the graphics look really
Yeah.
good, like today.
Yeah, a lot of people say it is like the definitive version of RE1, like the version they recommend people play, because the original it has
It's
some,
dated.
yeah, to put it nicely.
I
Yeah,
will,
so
I
yeah,
will say though,
the
there is
first
still
remake
some.
came the first remake came up after Code Veronica, but before RE0 and RE4.
I've seen your tweets about Code Veronica, and from what I hear, not the greatest.
Let's not talk about it because I could spend the whole podcast just ranting about that game. But yeah, RE1 remake came out in 2002.
Wow. I mean, I thought when I played it, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm not too late to this franchise, but now that you said that, I'm like, wow, I'm very late.
Oh yeah. I mean, to be fair, my first introduction into the franchise was RE7. So,
Wow.
I'm not a dyed in the cloth RE fan. So, I mean, the good news is I don't have nostalgia goggles. But on the flip side, I probably don't love it as much as a grew up playing them kind of person would.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to think about Resident Evil, because when you really look at it, it really is more like a B movie series. You know, those really over the top
Very
horrors.
much.
But I feel like it kind of embraces that, even if it in its more serious tone stories. I mean, for God's sake, I'm playing through Resident Evil 7 at the moment. Ethan gets his fucking hand lobbed off, and he's just like, oh. It's like, mate, your hand is cut off. Scream, for Christ's sake.
I know. Some people actually complain that Ethan is too like cool about the whole game. They're like, he's handling this very well. Like,
I mean, he kills his girlfriend, and, in my video, I was like, oh, sorry. But even he's just like, oh. I was like, wait, mate, you're not going to freak out the fact you just stabbed your girlfriend in the neck?
yeah, bro, like cold. But yeah.
A topic
So
for
yeah,
maybe when I finish that game.
So if we're going to talk about the remakes, how about we clarify modern remakes? Because the RE2 remake came out in 2019, so 17 years after the RE1 remake.
Wow.
So they're very much different eras of games, like a whole different generation. It's nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
So
sorry if you can hear my door at the moment.
no worries. As someone who came kind of late to the franchise, I have very unique perspectives on the original games and the remakes.
I'm kind of
In
the
some
same.
ways, I'm a lot harsher towards the older games because a lot of people, because like it's one of those deals where one, nostalgia kind of blinds people a bit, but more importantly, Resident Evil was a groundbreaking franchise from start to finish.
Hmm.
Like I'd say all the way up through RE4, they were like breaking new ground constantly. And that's what made them such a big deal. It's like, sure, I could look back at RE1 or RE2 and say, oh, look how dated and bad it is. But like at the time, nothing else was even remotely like in the same ballpark. Like there was Silent Hill, but like that is a very particular kind of game. Yeah.
I actually want to
And
play the Silent Hill games, the original ones, because I obviously I have an
they're
emulator,
strange.
and
Yeah.
I will admit I do kind of want to play more PS1 horror games because, especially after I played Dino Crisis 1, I've kind of opened the gates to do that. I don't want to talk about
Fair
that
enough.
game. That game. Oh,
Yeah, it's a bit of an oof.
well,
Kind of of
I'm in the
that Code
minority.
Veronica era.
I'm in the minority when I say it because apparently, just like Resident Evil, this game was apparently groundbreaking. I'm like, no, it's Resident Evil, but they just put.
With dinosaurs.
Yeah, but they could have done so much about. There's literally okay. Minor rant. There's only 4 dinosaurs in that game. 4. I'm like, do you not know how many
Wow.
predators were found at that time period? It's like,
More than four, I reckon.
yeah. I mean, Jurassic Park only had 4, like 2 predators in the movie as antagonists, but at the time, Jurassic Park was still in development, and they only had a few
Sure.
dinosaurs, and they wanted to
Yeah,
basically have the T Rex.
and Jurassic Park was groundbreaking in its own right regarding dinosaurs. But yeah, just saying
Minor rant.
dinosaurs like yeah, it's so funny. It's just like anytime you say in any context, just it's this, but with dinosaurs. That's just the funniest thing to me. It's like it's Spider-Man, but with dinosaurs. It's Doom, but with dinosaurs. It's like it's so funny. I digress.
Now that you say that, that is actually kind of funny.
There's that famous Spider-Man panel of like some mad scientist, and Spider-Man's like, "You've figured out how to control the human genome, and you could use it, and you're using it to turn people into dinosaurs. You could cure cancer." And he's like, "But I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs."
Wait, that's an
And it's
official
just
Marvel comic panel, not some parody?
yes, official, and it's
What?
amazing. It's like it's been memed to hell and back.
That
But
is amazing.
back on topic.
Now I
Back
just
on
want a
topic.
parody.
RE2 remake.
Hold on, I just want to say that's like I want to see a Resident Evil parody of that. With like, hold on, you managed to create a super powered tyrant monster that can wield a bazooka, but you couldn't cure diseases. I don't want to cure diseases. I want to make diseases.
Oh man. So anyway, I came into the franchise a bit late, RE7, and the funny thing about RE7, for those who aren't really like aware of the timeline with Resident Evil, and I don't mean the timeline in universe, I mean in real life. RE6 kind of killed the franchise for a while. Like if you're looking at the game releases for Resident Evil, you'll notice a pretty huge gap in the timeline after Resident Evil 6 because it kind of like it took away a lot of good faith from Capcom. And it wouldn't be until like 5 years later that we get another Resident Evil game.
That is mad
And
to think about, like, especially since Resident Evil is probably their biggest moneymaker, and they've done loads of spin offs for it.
yeah, absolutely. Um, And as a result, Resident Evil 7 was not just them attempting to reinvent the franchise for a new generation, and not only an attempt to return to form with proper horror, it was also intended to be it could be it's part of the our Resident Evil universe, but it's also very much a standalone story. And for me, that's why it worked so well because I didn't know anything about Chris Redfield or Wesker or the G virus or anything like that going into RE7. I was just like, I think that I've seen a clip of a man punching a boulder and a man with sunglasses who does Matrix stuff, and that was about the breadth of my Resident Evil knowledge. And I loved Resident Evil 7. I thought it was fantastic. And I would still say
I'm only at the bit
it's
where I killed
probably
Margaret, so no spoilers.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about it.
Okay.
Just, it was fantastic, loved it, and it got me to pay more attention to the franchise. And when Resident Evil 2 Remake came around, I thought it was just the damn coolest. I love this idea of playing through a campaign, then playing through a second campaign from a different person's perspective, and then playing through two more campaigns that are basically just what ifs. Like, what if Leon ended up in a completely different side of the city, and what if Claire ended up in a different side? Who would they meet? Different people? Would they have different stories? And that's just so fun.
I will admit
that's so interesting.
Before
there are entire cutscenes that are unique to certain campaigns, and that's crazy.
Yeah, like before we even talk about Resident Evil 3's remake, the fact that one of the things I actually did not like about Resident Evil 3's remake is that it didn't really have that. You play as two characters, which was cool.
Yeah,
but it was never, and they all just went into like a singular storyline. Whereas, just like you said with Leon and Claire, now even though they're not too different, especially near in like the midway of each of their campaigns, near the beginning and near the end, it's always different with whichever you play with.
Oh yeah,
not
that's
amazingly different,
fun. And I mean,
different enough.
It gives it different enough, and like compared to other games, like most games don't have nearly as much diversity in terms of campaigns. Like I can't even give you another example where you can do something like that, and that was in the original Resident Evil 2, and that was just like I said, part of what made this franchise so groundbreaking, because like that multiple campaign, multiple scenarios thing was unique to Resident Evil 2, and it hasn't really been done much since. It was amazing, and no one else has really managed to pull it off as well, or at least as iconically. And so I loved that.
One of my favorite aspects of... Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
Oh, sorry, no, it's just... and Resident Evil 2 has so much great content in it. I love the characters. They're written so well. The monsters are great. I love Mr. X. I think the G-Virus is cool as hell. Like everything about the game from start to finish is just a good time.
Yeah, and to briefly talk about my perspective of Resident Evil 2's remake before we start with Resident Evil 3, one thing I also liked about Claire, you've already pretty much said everything I thought about the game, especially the monsters, because each monster even gives off a different personality. Zombies are dull and slow, Lickers are sporadic and they're listening for sounds, because they're blind. The Tyrant, of course, he's like a Terminator, he's looking around. In fact, I didn't even notice, because I really thought he was scripted a lot of the time, but there are moments where he'll actually know you're in a room, leave, and then if you make a certain noise, he'll barge open that door again, because he was waiting for you.
Yeah, and if he's in a certain room, like there's very specific spots where if you're in like a hallway and he's in an adjacent room, he'll break through the wall to get you.
Oh, I didn't.
If he hears you.
I don't think I actually had that happen to me.
It's completely missable. A lot of people never see it, but there's like one, maybe two spots where it can happen, and it's the coolest, scariest thing. Like people getting jump scared by Mr. X just punching down a wall, and it's like, oh my god.
Oh, so he straight up just punches it down, not even just pushes it or anything like that.
Yeah, and that is a permanent, like there's now a hole there, and you can walk through it to get between that area and the other room. It's just part of the map now.
I wouldn't be surprised if that giant hole you find in the upper floor was caused by him before you even met him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like a crime scene investigation. You start at, like, when you first show up at the place and you start finding all these corpses and mysterious damages to the property, you're like, what could cause all this? And then it starts piecing together. It's like The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. It reminds me of that in a way. But, so overall, RE2 Remake, stellar game. One of the best in the franchise. Like, I'd say it's up there with RE7 as one of the just best.
Another thing I wanted to actually mention as well was Leon and Claire. Even though not only just their campaigns were different, but they even kind of played different. For instance, at the start they have their typical weak pistols, but the difference is Leon's pistol could be upgraded to the point it could be like a sort of submachine gun, whereas Claire's could be turned into like both a pistol and a magnum if you get the right upgrades. Not only that, Leon has more close range weaponry, such as like the shotgun, the flamethrower, whereas Claire was more defensive. She had the acid grenade, she had the submachine gun that was also a silencer.
Yeah.
What was the other weapon? Oh, the freaking taser. Who has that in the sewer? Who has a taser
Oh my
shotgun?
God. It's quite
What was the
strange. I mean, there is a.
What's the discussion? Okay,
Sorry.
Barry, now, just in case you somehow, in some sort of scenario, run into a giant monster, just go into the locker room over there, there's a giant taser gun for you. I'm sorry, what? Goodbye!
Right? It's like, what? When did this come up? Like, who was like, all right, boys.
And this isn't
we need
Umbrella
a giant
either.
taser.
This is literally just a regular workspace. Umbrella's workshop was on the other side of this room. Like, so this is a city weapon. Like, okay, now maybe alligators, but at the same time, who's gonna fire a taser into water?
I don't even think a regular. Well, I guess that's why they need a super taser. I don't know. Very funny. But yeah. So,
Yeah.
RE2 remake, fantastic. It took everything that made the original like groundbreaking, and then just improved it and made it good in a modern era. And like, damn, like RE2 remake is the standard for what I consider a good remake of an old game to be. You take what made that old game good, and then you improve everything else. And it's fantastic. It is the gold standard of remakes, in my opinion.
So I guess this only brings us now into the very mixed, but not entirely mixed, but the more, I guess you could say, the lesser. I'm trying to think what was the best way to describe it. Well, basically Resident Evil 3's remake. So obviously I played Resident Evil 2's remake, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually excited for this. I'm even going to pre-order it because, you know what? I'd have faith in this game. And obviously, I never knew who Nemesis was. I didn't know who Jill. Well, I kind of did because I did play Resident Evil 1's remaster, and Jill was okay in that. But the only thing I liked about her was that she had more inventory space and she had a lockpick, and I didn't need to look for some fucking rusty key, a disposable rusty key.
Find a rusty key, go to the other side of the map, find something else, go to the other side of the map, finally unlock decent inventory.
Okay, listen, people, if you do plan to get into the series and you want to play Resident Evil 1 first, play as Jill first. Trust me, as much as Chris is a badass, my goodness, he has, despite being a big, chunky man, he does not have that much inventory space. In fact, I think the only thing he has is more health. That's it.
Ah, man. I mean, I appreciate the characters being different to play as, but you know, inventory management.
So Jill's story in Resident Evil 3's remake, obviously, she sort of tried to expose Umbrella, but it didn't work out because if you haven't played the first one, the mansion went kaboomies. So she had no evidence to bankrupt Umbrella, and Umbrella is still. I like the little propaganda video they had at the opening of this game where it shows Umbrella being about peace, but then they're showing them creating Nemesis. I was like, that's charming. That's good.
RE3 beginning is so solid. Like, I really like it. It had me convinced. Like, even in the demo, like I was like, oh man, this is gonna be amazing. I really didn't quite keep that energy for the whole game, but
I mean, I disagree in some points, but I tell you what, I might as well play this video now because I'm going to be talking about the cut content. But yeah, so talking about my experience with it first. Starting the game, it was playing in first person, which was kind of interesting, and then you get introduced to Nemesis right away. Like, I thought he was going to be like a mid boss, or maybe, you know, he was going to be like Mr. X. You know, I defeat the main monster, and then I'm like, all right, where do I go next? And suddenly,
kind of build you up to it.
Yeah, but this game, to be fair though, Nemesis was always the main villain of the game. Even because to be clear, I actually played the PS1 version, and I have to admit, was not a fan of it. But I feel that's because I was spoiled of the remake. But it's not a bad game. There's definitely things from the original I wish was in the remake, but at the same time, I understand why they cut it out. So Nemesis chasing you through a whole building, he's tearing it apart to try and kill Jill. This is the moment I was like, okay, this guy is not like Mr. X, Tyrant. Oh, for God, I hate saying Mr. X. I hate that name so much.
It's amazing, Mr. X forever.
Then again, no, I don't know why they nicknamed Nemesis Nemesis. Like, I don't know. Umbrella are weird with their names. uh,
Eh.
so Nemesis already convinced me that he's going to be a very scary monster, and he was through a majority of the opening of the game. It wasn't until mostly near the half portion, actually not even half, like near the last hour, he became a boss enemy, and I'm a bit mixed on that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the story of it. I think the story is pretty solid. It doesn't take itself seriously. It has a wide range of good characters. Jill was really fun. She was really badass. Carlos was pretty cool as well.
I'd say Carlos is probably the highlight as far as characters are concerned.
I actually
He was almost a cliche in the first game, but in the original game. But in this version, I think they do him pretty well.
I love the fact as well. In a way, you know what? Actually, I need to take back what I said because a certain thing about Carlos and Jill not playing too differently. Jill was more agile, more dodging. Freaking Carlos, freaking right hooks a monster. Even a hunter, he right hooks a hunter and sends it flying. I'm like,
fucking Chad.
I'm like, Carlos, man. Like, I thought he could only do that to zombies, but then when I panicked and run away from a hunter, and I was like, dodge, and he just punched. I was like, okay, that works. He straight up punches him. I wish I could have done a dab there.
Right? Every game would benefit from a dab button. Purely because it'd be funny.
And yeah, so I actually kind of liked it. It's kind of weird to say, but even though Carlos was freaking armed up to the chief of machine guns, grenades, C4, well, you can only use the C4 in the bit, his sections were probably more scary than Jill's.
Yeah, he's not as versatile in terms of how he can handle situations, which makes it much harder, which in a way makes it scarier.
I will say, it was kind of cool going through the what was it, the RPD department again. I don't know why. If you people seen my video, I don't know why I was getting so nostalgic being in the areas I was in. In fact, it was kind of sad to find out what happened to what was his name? Marvin. Yeah.
It's very sad. And that was like one of the best additions to the narrative of RE2.
At the moment Brad says sorry and Marvin hesitates, that was so gut-wrenching to watch.
That's so fucked. Like, goddamn. Unlucky.
Yeah, and it even makes that whole line he says to Leon or Claire even more meaningful.
Oh, yeah. Like, I love it. Like, that's the thing. That's a good thing. Never mind. I'll get to my piece in a minute. Continue.
Yeah, I'm going to be trying to be as brief as I can on this, because obviously I have Star Wars nights, people. If you saw my video, I obviously enjoyed the game. I like the variation of enemies. I fucking lost my shit when I found out hunters were in this game. In fact, I need to talk about exactly my experience. Okay, so I'm in the hospital. I'm seeing loads of dead zombies, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is clearly not a licker. And if you've seen my video, there's a moment I'm walking down the hallway and something just ran past in front of me, and of course, you know, I was in that mood where it's like, oh, I've ran around to so many rooms. So I was like almost like half asleep, really. And then suddenly, something just ran past. I'm like, wait, well, did I see something?
Yeah.
And then you complete the puzzle, and no, the reason I managed to immediately tell it was a hunter, because they recreated that scene from the first game where you open a door, suddenly you go to a cutscene, something's just chasing down, running down all the areas you just went to, and then you just see its hand reach for the door handle. Like in the original, you see its hand reach for the door handle. Like, this is not a dumb monster. Like, he knows how to use a door.
Clever girl.
And yeah, and then the moment it got to the door, I go, no. Then its claw comes through the door and it nudges it aside. I'm like, it can't be. Because these places aren't too close to each other, so how the hell is there a hunter here? I'm like thinking, there was no hunters in the second game, so how the fuck are you down here?
Yeah.
And obviously...
and what's cool about hunters is that they were actually, like, developed by Umbrella to hunt down people and kill them. The same way that tyrants are. But, of course, you know, they were an inferior version of Mr. X and...
It's also the fact as well, from what I can tell from the lore, because they had a reptilian sort of behavior and not a human behavior, it kind of made them a bit unpredictable with how they went with methods. Because
Yeah, they weren't as sophisticated as a human, even if they were pretty clever,
like they
which
just
made
had the
them a little
animal
more
instinct.
tricky to manage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
not as reliable.
you know, they hunt, they feed, they breed, and that's it. Just rinse and repeat.
Yeah, very much like a velociraptor. Actually, they're very sophisticated hunters, but they're also still an animal.
Yeah, so that's what kind of made them interesting for me, and why I also liked as well because in the remake of the first game, sure they said to have really powerful scales, but when you have a magnum, you could just one shot them, like no joke.
Yeah.
Even on the hardest difficulty, I was just like, oh, eh, it's a magnum.
Hmm.
And you know what's kind of sad? When I played the first game remake, I stocked up on so much magnum that I kind of nearly one shotted the tyrant and hunters near the end of the game.
I mean, that's kind of what you're supposed to do, I imagine. You know,
But I know,
at the
I
very
don't.
least, I feel like that's what most people do.
Yeah, I never did find the Magnum in the third remake though. Even though I was told I actually missed it, I was like, "Oh, are you serious? Are you serious right now?"
Unlucky.
That would have made those hunter attacks much more tolerable. Now, in
True.
discussing Nemesis, now just like what I said in the beginning of this video, at the start of the game, he's perfect. And in fact, I'd say at the start of the game, he's almost better than the Tyrant from Resident Evil 2's remake. One, being in a safe room does not matter. He knows you're in there, and he'll either wait right outside, but if you take too long, he'll go on top of a building, wait for you to run near him, and just drop down in front of you. Or better yet, like I think I even showed you this clip last year. If you open the door, his tentacle will immediately go in and pull you out, even if you've briefly opened the door.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah. So and of course as well, if you try to shoot his heart, the weird chest thing he has, he'll actually block the bullets. And in fact, you even sometimes see him close his hand and just drop the bullets aside, like very slowly, like yeah.
Yeah, like he's showing off how awesome he is.
Even the way he, okay, with the Tyrant in Resident Evil 2's remake, when he wanted to get past a zombie, he just more like just shoved it aside because obviously he's trying to limit damage. But because Nemesis has he's got the opportunity, because obviously Raccoon City is practically a war zone at this point. He could be as destructive as he wants. So he'll freaking pick up a zombie and hurl him aside. He'll smash down a door, smash down a wall. Because he's like, yes, I am given the opportunity to fuck shit up.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember where exactly it happened. I think it was during the bazooka scene when I was running away, and he straight up just picked up a zombie and hurled him at me.
That's so great.
So he's like, I don't care what's in my way. I'm killing you.
Very fun.
Now, to talk about the cut content for this particular part, apparently after you solved the generator issue, in fact, I should probably actually mention this. Originally, the RPD scene was actually meant to be Carlos and Jill at the opening of the game, and then they would have made it to the safe room. However, that was changed to be Carlos bit with Tyson, because it doesn't really make sense to why Jill was looking for this doctor, even though she has no idea who he is.
Yeah.
In this as well, you run into the Lickers, and Nemesis punches down that wall, and then that's when Jill's like, Carlos, he's alive. But nothing really changes from there. But this was also going to be the part when you got to the safe room, you got to the part where the game really starts off when you leave the train station. He was meant to have a bazooka at this point, and you know what? Thank fuck he didn't. Because, no joke, after I played the game and I thought, oh, let me start playing this game on harder difficulties, Nemesis with a bazooka was annoying. Not scary, it was annoying. Because depending on what difficulty you play, Nemesis is faster, he takes less damage. Like, and him with a bazooka through that entire section of trying to deal with the bugs, deal with the train station puzzle. In fact, he was originally going to be allowed to go into the train station and interrupt you while you were doing the puzzle. I'm glad that was cut.
Wow.
Like, that would have quickly gotten annoying. So I will admit the bazooka bit was a bit of a throw-off for me since I never played the original. His boss fight with a flamethrower, I was like, what? And it's like he doesn't. It's like he wants you to start running. Like he wants to make it interesting. Like he just aims at you and he's just like going run. So he's a bit sadistic like that, I have to admit. Now, but the opening bit, he was great. You know, he's scary, he's unpredictable. When you defeat him, or you know, when the epic Russian man blew him up, you know, rest in peace, legend. At least he tried to kill Nemesis in the most epic line ever.
Right.
Get
Very
off,
noble sacrifice.
get off my train, shitbag.
Yeah. Very very action movie.
And you know, I did like his transformation design. I will say that compared to his original one, wow, this form looks terrifying. But at the same time,
Yeah.
because he's so ginormous and more monstrous, they kind of had to reduce into a boss fight, which was like, well, that's kind of lame. Because I might be in the unpopular opinion about this. The G Virus monster, while cool, was kind of my least favorite aspect of the remake, the last remake, because one, he was just a boss fight bit. Obviously, I wouldn't want to be chased by him and Mr. X at the same time. That would get kind of difficult. But it was kind of like, oh, he's just, you know, the boss of this area. You defeat him here, you move on to the next stage. You go to this stage, oh, and then he appears here, just bigger and scarier. Very few moments I was really scared of the G-Virus. And sadly, that's kind of where the next stages of Nemesis went. The terrifyingness was gone. He was just the G-Virus 2.0. You know, you defeat him in this section, you move on to the next section, and you defeat him here, but he's bigger and scarier. Don't get me wrong, the designs for him are really good, especially his final form, especially the music he has for that fight. Like, holy shit.
I will say his final form is definitely an improvement over his original final form from the first version of that game.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that form. That just looks so weird. It's like,
it looks less like I'm gone, this is my ultimate form, and more I'm a squid. Like, it's a mess.
But the other bit I was actually kind of disappointed by, because this was something that I was really thought was fascinating about Nemesis in the. I will say the story of Nemesis in the original was better than the story of Nemesis in the remake. Because in the remake, you just find a letter saying, "Oh, by the way, we got this new tyrant called Nemesis. Have fun, fuckheads." And it's like, "Oh, so his name's Nemesis." I'm like, "What? That's it? We don't get to learn what his human name was. We don't get to learn how he's so powerful." In the original, however, you find loads of data about Nemesis. In fact, you even then go to this one room, which looks like a training room, in which you find corpses of the tyrants of the previous game, including the super tyrant. I'm like, hold on, this motherfucker killed 10 tyrants and one super tyrant.
And that was such an important scene in the original RE3, because that explained to the player how Mr. X could show up in so many different places in so many different campaigns and at once, because there was always more than one of him.
They did kind of explain it, where you do find that room with tyrants in tubes, but you know.
Yeah, but that could easily just be, you know, oh, these were the prototypes, and then there was the final form, which is the only one. Like, you see that in games all the time.
True.
So yeah, it's very unfortunate they cut that from RE3, because, like, a lot of people, if you play Claire's campaign in RE2 Remake, in one of those timelines, you see the G-Virus kill Mr. X, and you're like, wait, then who does Leon fight in his campaign? Because he has to fight Mr. X in his campaign, and they never really explore that.
So it does kind of paint this image that which story's canon then.
Yeah, but if you have multiple Mr. X's, suddenly it makes perfect sense. But yeah. So continue. You were saying.
So I was kind of disappointed that Nemesis' story in the remake wasn't really fleshed out, especially considering that in the original game, that is the name of the game. It's about Nemesis, and it's kind of weird to think about. But the third game is about Nemesis, and kind of Umbrella's plan is nearly in fruition. They've nearly developed the perfect tyrant.
Yeah.
Until, you know, multiple spin-offs came out, and it's like, no, this is the perfect tyrant. It's like, yeah, you said that about the last 5. Are you sure this is the perfect one?
Yeah.
Well, I do have this idea for a tall vampire lady. When can we start development on that?
It's like, okay, it's like Mr. X, but twice as tall and sexy. What do you think? Like, wait, I'm confused. But
So,
yeah,
it's like, wait, why is she called the vampire lady? It's like, because she sucks real good.
Hey, Jacob, bum bum.
no, boo! There are children present. No, not really.
Oh god, I'm just picturing that Umbrella have like a little daycare. And I'm like, now people, tell me what the most
They
efficient.
did.
Wait, what?
That orphanage is for kids who are like they're either A, test subjects, or B, kids of the scientists who work at Umbrella.
Oh yeah, oh my goodness, yeah. Oh wow, that joke was gonna take a different. I was gonna say they were doing like the ABC and they just had Nemesis like holding up different letters.
Stars.
Oh,
But yeah.
oh god, Twinkle Little Stars would have had a different meaning then.
Twinkle, twinkle, little. Oh my god! Just imagine like some stupid like animation where it's like Leon singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Stars," but then on Stars, Nemesis' head bursts through the wall to say "Stars." Just oh my god!
That would be amazing. So yeah, to wrap up, essentially my thoughts entirely of Resident Evil 3 remake. I consider it a good game, but do I consider it better than the original? Yes, in the terms of gameplay and its characters and story, but at the same time, this is meant to be like a remake, you know, take what things were from the original, make it better, but also stay faithful. Like, I would have been fine if they cut out a few, like for instance, the rocket launcher chasing, I'm glad that was cut out, I'm glad it was just for that one section. I'm glad they also kind of kept a lot of the characters relatively the same, just, you know, modern.
Dialogue.
It's just that the bosses, Nemesis was kind of just reduced to being this really powerful enemy. Like, I guess he was kind of turned into that lady from Resident Evil 1's remake. You know that weird immortal lady that just appears randomly?
I'm not super familiar with the RE1 remake.
Okay, well, there was this one girl who, I think she was actually the original Nemesis now that I think about it. Yeah, she was. Or she was the prototype of the project. And yeah, she would just appear randomly in certain areas. She'll block off the way and you have to maneuver around her. And you can't kill her. You could like damage her enough to the point she's on the floor, but then she gets back up and starts pursuing you.
Yeah.
So Nemesis would kind of reduce that, and then he just became a final boss fight. I guess I will say his final death was way better than in the original. Because in the original, he just got shot up enough, and then Jill just pulls out a magnum and goes, "I'll give you stars." Which, don't get me wrong, it's a cheesy and cool phrase, but to kill off this powerful monster with 3 magnum shots to the head, kind of lame. But in the remake, you fucking shove a laser gun down his throat and blow him to pieces. I was like, alright.
Yeah, it's a significantly more like appropriately epic death for an epic antagonist.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Nemesis was an epic threat. I just wish there was more story about him and, you know, the game.
Yeah.
Because we don't even know he's there to kill Jill unless you've, and weirdly enough, played the original games. Because that's the whole point of Nemesis.
Yeah.
He's there to eliminate stars. In fact, you only get to know about it is when, briefly in the opening, when Brad's like, "Oh, he's got a hard-on for the 2 only members of Stars in town." It's like, how do you know this?
Yeah.
In fact, how did you escape him?
Right?
Like, you're not exactly built like Chris or Jill.
Man, there's this like really fun comic that came out like back in the day that was like Mr. X versus the G virus, or not Mr. X. It was Nemesis versus the G virus. And it's basically this story of like at some point during the events of RE2 and RE3, Birkin, transforming into, you know, the G virus, encounters Nemesis and they fight. Yeah, it's a pretty epic fight. And like at one point, like it's actually kind of like, it's funny. Nemesis can put up a good fight, but Birkin kind of just keeps, like, the whole gimmick of the G virus is that it is constantly evolving to be stronger. So it over the course of the fight, like Nemesis is just gradually getting overpowered, and
Wow.
like he has to like call in a squad of Mister X's to help him out.
Oh Jesus,
Um,
really?
yeah, and then Birkin tears them apart. Like,
Wow.
uh, it's a pretty cool fight. Like I want like it's one of the most like famous feats for Nemesis is that during his battle with Birkin, he created a magnitude 5 earthquake and a tornado just from the
Wow.
impact of their fight. Like it was like it's pretty epic stuff. But
I need to
I
look that up.
digress.
I need to look that up after this recording. So that's pretty
Yeah.
much all I had to say about this remake. You know, I love it. Do I consider it better than the 2 remake? No, but if I had a choice either to play this game or um, Dino Crisis, oh yeah, I'm choosing Resident Evil 3's remake over that any day. It's still fun. There's
um,
just bits that could have made it better, and the cut content that people cry about honestly doesn't really change the game all that much. I mean, yeah, the RPD scene changes a little bit, but not
yeah.
significantly.
All right.
So,
So here
Jaru, let's hear it.
All right, I have quite a few thoughts, and it's kind of funny because, generally speaking, I tend to look pretty poorly upon pretty much any Resident Evil game that came out before 2010. Uh, like broadly speaking, I generally think that they have a lot of flaws that people kind of overlook for the sake of nostalgia. And
We're
like
all
take
victims.
Resident Evil 4. Yeah, like Resident Evil 4, for example, is often heralded as one of the best in the franchise, maybe even one of the best games ever made. And it's like, and don't get me wrong, it's a great game. It's an 8 out of 10 at best, is the problem.
You know,
It has tons of problems.
I actually do think
And
an 8
like,
out of 10 is pretty good for it.
yeah, it's like, don't get me wrong, it's a great game. It also has paper thin plot characters. Like, it's cliche as fuck. It has the controls are terrible. Like,
Oh, the
it's
tank
not
controls.
perfect. Dear God, yeah. And so, like, and again, I still give it an 8 out of 10. But that was RE4, one of the best in the franchise. So, how am I going to regard RE2 and RE3 and RE1? Not super kindly. Um, And so my general perspective on the originals and my general perspective on the remakes is take the things that were iconic and groundbreaking and bring them along, but build the rest from the ground up. Like just reinvent it, reinvent the dialogue. Like just basically take what worked well and improve on everything else, like I said. And that's what RE2 remake. RE2 remake, like I said, is the gold standard for remake. It's fantastic. And going into RE3 remake, I was expecting them to give it the same treatment, to be
Mm.
just RE3 again, but better.
Mm.
Because that's what RE2 remake is. It is RE2, but better.
But it's not better. They
Unfor-
don't have spiders. I'm not kidding. That was actually a complaint. There was because apparently there was giant spiders in the second game original, but they didn't really offer much. They just appeared now and again.
well, most people who aren't arachnid fans are gonna generally say RE2 remake is better than RE2,
Hmm.
and that's good. That's what you should want. But here's the problem: do I think RE3 remake is better than RE3? Yes, but here's the thing: it's better than RE3 almost exclusively because it's a modern video game, whereas RE3 is a very old video. It's not better. Like it's not an improved RE3 remake is not RE3 but better the way RE2 remake was.
Hmm.
RE3 remake is its own thing. It really doesn't draw much inspiration from the original beyond a few set pieces, a few characters, and a few plot points. Beyond those, RE3 remake is really its own beast. And unfortunately, that's really not what I want out of a remake. I feel like the biggest appeal of the like because here's the thing, a bit of history. Resident Evil 3 when it originally came out wasn't received amazingly.
Wait, it wasn't?
People loved no, like it wasn't. There were it had its fans, but most after the groundbreaking phenomena that was RE2, RE3 felt kind of like a tag along, like an afterthought, almost like DLC before DLC.
That's kind of funny to think about because
And
Nemesis became so iconic to the point in nearly every Capcom crossover where they had Resident Evil, Nemesis would have been the main antagonist. Like there was an RPG game in which you play as Chris and Jill. One of their antagonist boss fights is Nemesis. In Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, Chris's main antagonist in that was Nemesis.
yeah,
So
yeah, and it's like the character of Nemesis is the selling point of RE3. It is what is remembered about RE3 because there's nothing else worth remembering about RE3. And this is the main problem with the original RE3 is that there's not really a story. In RE2, there's this deep story, this deep mystery at the heart of RE2 that's about uncovering what's the source of this outbreak? What are these monsters coming from? Who is Umbrella? What are they doing? And like it's a big the plot is important for understanding who these characters are, who Birkin is, what the G virus is, etc. It's integral to the story. RE3
it's
has
kind
none
of
of that.
funny to think about that. The actual story with your characters is not as interesting as the backstory and the things you find around the environment.
Absolutely. Because like Leon's a cop, rookie cop. Like, he's just trying to do his job. Like, it's not like the story isn't about Leon and his amazing journey as a person. The story is about the world and the events happening in the world.
Yeah, Leon
And
doesn't even go
that's
through
fine.
development.
Not really. And you know what? That's totally fine. You don't need your characters to be the main focal point, or like your main character to be the main focal point. He's very much what you'd call like a flat arc protagonist in that.
Yeah.
Game. Like he's just there to be kind of a stand-in for the player, and that's totally fine.
It worked in Halo.
Yeah, exactly. However, in RE3, there's no story. There's no plot to uncover. There's no mystery to unravel. It's literally just, hi, I'm Jill. I'm in Raccoon City. Things are going to hell. I need to get out of Raccoon City. And that's the entire game.
I just thought about she gets punched by Nemesis and it just goes, hey, you're probably wondering how I got here.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's great.
Just it. Like, that was the premise of the original RE3. And because it often reused many of the monsters and sets of RE2, it sort of felt like a rushed kind of cash grab sort of thing to some people. Not everyone. Plenty of people love RE3. Plenty of people, there's even some who would say it's their favorite game. And, that's their right to think such things.
just the tone in your voice.
Everyone, we have free will,
I could just feel your eye twitching just saying that.
But
everyone can enjoy it.
Like the big selling point of RE2 was the mystery, the multiple campaigns, and that's like that was the big thing was the story, the mystery, the multiple campaigns, and that's what they focused. They brought that over to RE2 Remake, and then improved all the stuff that hadn't aged well. And like that's how you do a remake. With RE3, the main element that mattered, the main element they needed to do right, and the main element they needed to carry over was Nemesis. He needed to be done well because he is RE3. He is what makes that game that game. And for those who've only played the remake or have never seen the original, Nemesis is constantly in that game. Like it is rare. Like it is typically like if you've played RE2 remake, like you encounter Mr. X like decently often, like but he's not there constantly. He's sort of like a surprise appearance every once in a while.
Like a sub boss in a way.
Very much a sub boss. Not with Nemesis. Nemesis is on your ass constantly. And you have multiple moments throughout the story where you have to make a choice, an actual choice on how you're going to deal with Nemesis. There are multiple moments where you can choose, like time will slow down. It'll say, do you choose to do this or do you choose to do that? And depending on which choice you choose, you'll either have to fight Nemesis in one way or fight him in another way. And that will decide, well, one, how easy the fight is, how hard it is, what loot you get if you win. And like there's these are like the main big Nemesis moments, is these duels. You duel Nemesis over and over and over and over again throughout RE3.
Hence why
And
he
that's
is.
the gimmick.
Hence his name, your Nemesis.
He's your nemesis. You fight him constantly. And so all the unique, everything that makes RE3 unique is centered around him. Did they accurately kind of recreate the feel of that nemesis in RE3 Remake?
In some areas, I definitely felt he was a threat.
In the beginning of the game, well, here's the thing. In the beginning of the game of RE3 Remake, where Nemesis is a pretty constant threat, they did him fairly well, decently well. Like, that's good. Most people who are a fan of the original like the beginning of the remake. However, after that initial section, Nemesis kind of starts to just sort of fall off a cliff. He stops appearing, and when he does appear, he's not Nemesis anymore. He turns into these like new forms that are more monstrous. And at that point, he's not Nemesis. That's not Nemesis. In the original game, Nemesis doesn't transform like until like the last 10th of the game.
Yeah, he more just takes body damage.
Yeah. And he does, and even after he starts to transform a little, it's less turning into a giant monster and more turning into like the super tyrant from RE2 Remake. Like he just gets a little bulkier, a little scarier, a little faster, but he's still more or less human or humanoid shaped. And so you can still duel him like you've done the whole game. It's just getting progressively harder. Not in RE3 Remake. In fact, they kind of just throw the whole Nemesis system out the window. He's not your Nemesis. He's not this person you duel every other section. He's more a threat that you deal with in the first section, but he just sort of goes away for a while and then comes back as a mini boss, goes away for a while, comes back as a mini boss, goes away, comes back for a final fight.
Do you know what's actually kind of sad about that?
Yeah. And that's unfortunate because the main appeal, and like everyone was a little worried when they first saw his redesign, because they weren't certain if they were sold on it until they saw it in action. They're like, is this going to be a good, because they were assuming this is going to be the face you have to fight like 24 times over the course of the game. And so it's like, okay, do I like his design? And when they finally saw it in motion, they were like, all right, this is sick. I can't wait to fight him over the course of this game. And then you don't get to fight him. You don't get to duel him the way you duel him in the original. You do in the first section again, but for the vast majority of the game, you don't. And that's just tragic because that's the main gimmick of RE3. And that's why my overall opinion of RE3 Remake is, it's a better game because RE3 is an old, crappy game and RE3 Remake is a new, modern game. But it's not a good remake. It's a good game. I'd say it's like a 7 out of 10, but it's not a good remake because it doesn't really stay true to what made the original good in the first place. It just sort of does its own thing, which is unfortunate because after RE2 Remake, everyone had such high expectations, myself included. And that's when it kind of...
Most didn't even think 3 was going to get a remake. They just thought, no, it's perfect.
Right? No, a lot of people didn't think it would happen. But then it did, and I was so excited. I was so excited to see them do Nemesis well, and they didn't. And that's so heartbreaking because that's what I was really excited for. And that's when it kind of came out that there was some behind-the-scenes problem.
Oh, there?
Yes. You see, RE2 Remake was made
people.
in-house. Yeah. RE2 Remake was very important to Capcom. They really cared about doing it well. They wanted it to be true to the original. They wanted it to feel like they were doing the characters justice while updating them in a satisfying and engaging manner for a new audience. And they went the whole 9 yards in making sure RE2 Remake was perfect. And so they made that game in-house at Capcom. Capcom made RE2. Capcom didn't make RE3 Remake.
Really?
Capcom, the majority of the game was outsourced to a different company.
I mean,
I forget what the
I know they had different teams, but I just assumed it was just a different department in Capcom. Like, okay, we're going to be doing this one. You
nope,
guys do this one.
nope. All right, Capcom made the cutscenes for RE3 remake, but the gameplay and was completely done by a different studio, and it shows.
Do you know what? Now that you mention that,
Unfortunately,
yeah, even in the zombie gameplay, it kind of feels different because in the
yeah,
second remake, they're very fleshy, and even when they fall to the ground, they're very ragdolly, and you're not sure if they're still alive. Whereas in the third game, you can definitely tell when a zombie's going to get back up. In fact, nearly every zombie just got back up after you shot it down. Where
yeah,
it kind of destroyed that unpredictability. It's one of my worst fears of playing the second remake was just walking up to a corpse and being like, "Are you dead?" Just getting out my knife and just poking
yeah,
his toes, and he might not be,
yeah,
he might not attack you then, but then you're thinking you're safe. You come back like an hour later, and he's just like, "Surprise, bitch!"
yeah. And so yeah, like Capcom designed all the characters. Like they designed Nemesis, they designed Jill, they animated the cutscenes, but the gameplay was entirely handled by this other studio, and they really didn't do a great job. Unfortunately, they cut a ton of the Nemesis fights, which is again the main selling point of the game, and replaced it with content that is okay, but it's not RE3. And
Oof, that's actually
that's why when it was announced that they're remaking RE4, everyone was super scared. Not only because RE4 was, one of the best games in many people's opinions, not only in the franchise but ever made, but it was also just, if are they going to do this outsourcing nonsense for RE4 remake? If so, the general opinion was if you're going to outsource it, we'd prefer you just not do it. We prefer you not butcher our favorite game.
yeah.
But thankfully, it's been revealed that RE4 will be made in house by Capcom.
I think they
So
learned their mistake.
that's good. Yeah, and they actually at one point kind of the if I might be remembering this incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure at one point they basically scrapped what like they had made some progress on RE4 and then kind of scrapped it all and then restarted the RE4 remake project because
Okay.
they were like, this isn't up to our standards.
Do you know
We want
what?
this to be better.
I have to big them up for that because it takes a lot of guts to look at what you're making that would have probably taken like months, maybe a year, and just saying,
Lots of money, lots of time.
and you're like, do you know what, guys? We maybe should try and look at this again. Because in fact, that's kind of similar to Earthbound. A lot of progress is made on it, and at some point they're thinking, we need to. I'm not sure about it. To the point they're like, right, let's just start from the ground up and work our way back to here and see how we get to there. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why I have a lot of mad respect for Capcom because they can look at a product and be like, you know what, guys, it's okay, but maybe we need to, try something.
But we
else.
can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And credit to them when they try something new with a game, but they see it didn't have good reception. They go, all right, let's go back and let's try and for the next game, try and bring what people like about the others.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't seem to learn
Absolutely.
after Resident Evil 5.
It was an unfortunate era for Capcom. They kind of messed up a lot in that era, but in the modern era, like Capcom are the Cap gods these days. Like everything they make is great. Like every franchise has been doing well that they've cared to work on. Like Resident Evil, Monster Hunter,
Mega Man,
even some of their fighting game stuff like
Street Fighter.
Street Fighter. Like Street Fighter 5 has been like in its best is right now the best it's ever been as a game.
Of course, they've added Dan Hibiki on it.
They added Dan and they added whole new mechanics to how the fighting game works. So like they actually care these days, and everyone's really happy about that.
Do you remember seeing those meme videos when after Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite kind of bombed, people making all those meme videos where Dragon Ball Fighter Z and Cross Tag Battle are going to destroy Capcom? But those games aren't really talked about anymore, which is kind of sad because those games are good. But now looking back on them, it's like, yeah, Capcom has kind of improved where you guys have just added more Gokus.
Yeah, although in their defense, there's not a lot other than Goku in the Goku show that is Dragon Ball. You know, it's like, oh, who we're gonna add next? Another random minion character? You know. Anyway, but we're off topic. So
Yeah,
RE3
I just
had
want to,
unfortunate.
bring up that story.
Yeah, fair enough. RE3 had unfortunate production choices, and as a result, it didn't really end up as well. And so, like, and aside from the gameplay, which is the main gripe I have with it, I also have some issues with how they portray Jill.
Oh, okay. Let's hear.
Yeah, in the original, and the best way I can describe this is that she, in RE3 Remake, she kind of suffers from "I'm a strong, independent woman" syndrome, which is a problem that I see a lot in the modern film and game industry, where they kind of just make the female protagonists invincible, strong, independent women characters who like aren't real people. They're just badasses with no real
Well,
depth or
you got,
personality.
yeah, but
They're
the males are the
inhuman.
same.
Yeah, I'm not saying like the opposite is like good, but like my point is it's not a good character writing, and it feels, and it's lazy is the problem. They're just like, they don't want to put in the effort to actually write a real good character. Like take oh, I don't know, pick your favorite horror film from the 90s that was like Aliens, like Alien with Ellen Ripley. Like, she's one of the best strong independent female characters ever written, and she doesn't suffer from that syndrome because she's human. She's very much vulnerable. She has flaws, she has problems, she has shortcomings, and that's what makes her relatable
She's
and
an
cool. And
engineer
when she
going up
overcomes those,
against an alien predator.
yeah, and like, it's when she overcomes her flaws, overcomes her shortcomings, overcomes her fears to face the threat, that she feels badass. With, and that was part of,
Oh, that really
and
was a
that
short
was
break.
part of, yeah. I just had to turn off my stupid phone. And part of the appeal of Jill in the original game is that she's very much just like having a bad time. Like, she's not this like gritty, like, oh, I I chew Nemesis and I spit him out for like I ate tyrants for breakfast without milk. Like that's her attitude in RE3 Remake. In the original, she's like, oh my god, this is the worst. I'm fucking terrified. And
I will say her
that,
attitude towards the Umbrella guys is kind of justified because obviously Umbrella are responsible for the death of her entire crew. Like, before Resident Evil
sure,
1, her team was of 10 people, Chris, Albert, and Barry Burton included. And then, oh, and Rebecca. I always forget about Rebecca. But then at the end of that, her entire crew is dead. And that's why
sure,
she hates Umbrella. And I kind of think it's justified why she's like that in the remake. Because
sure.
realistically, you would just hate this company with all your guts. And the fact that they got away with it, like, oh, we never knew about a Spencer Mansion or Albert Wesker. We don't know what you're talking about. And Jill's then, she's not even part of the RPD anymore, I think. I think she's got like either suspended or laid off. And in a hotel, you kind of see that, yeah, she's not doing too well.
Yeah, and that I was so like excited when I saw like the trailers with her like having PTSD and stuff. I was like, yes, that's great. That's good human characterization. That's like, they're gonna write Jill well. I'm excited, and then they didn't. It was a bait. It was a trick.
Yeah,
and
I never did comment
like,
on it, but that
don't get me wrong.
opening with the zombie thing, what was the point of that? Like,
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like,
scary.
it feels like the. I thought it was going to lead to something. It was going to be meaningful in some vague way, but it really wasn't, and that just sort of sums up the whole game, don't it? And so yeah, with Jill, it's just like in the original, she's a real person who is traumatized and terrified. But what makes her an awesome protagonist is that she gets up and she goes forward. She moves forward, even though she's fucking terrified. And she fights these monsters. She saves these lives. She does everything she can.
Heck, I don't even think she really cared that much when the civilians got killed by Nemesis in the remake. Yeah, actually, she didn't even care. They got killed by Nemesis. You see him stand over the bodies, and she just goes, "How is he still alive?" It's like, you are aware he just killed all the people you saved.
Yeah, and she's so focused on in the remake. She's so focused on being this edgy badass. Is like, I'm a badass. I smoke weed and I kick ass and I chew bubble gum and bullshit. And it's like, I'm a bitch and I treat everyone like shit because I'm too cool to act nice to people. And it's just like, Jesus Christ,
Okay,
I
like I
hate
said,
it.
it's understandable why she's like that with Umbrella, because when you see her interact with like, the gun store owner, her tone's completely different with him. Like she feels, safe with him.
Yeah, but even that has this aura of like her trying to be like, oh, it's her cool buddy, like, hey, my dude, we got like, she has this like, the start of Predator where Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers do that like massive handshake
Oh yeah,
thing.
the famous meme.
Yeah, like
You
that. It
son
has
of a
that.
bitch.
Yeah, it has that energy to it. The I'm an action hero with my cool actiony dude, bro, and it's like it has that energy to it. And I
Okay.
get like, and I know it may seem like, oh, but you're hating on Jill, but why aren't you hating on Arnold Schwarzenegger? It's like, look, I'm not about to like submit the Predator for an Oscar or whatever. Like, I'm not claiming Arnold Schwarzenegger has ever played a character that was nuanced or interesting at all, but that's not the appeal
Plus,
of him. And
Arnold is freaking charming as hell, no matter what role he's in, and
true,
he's so memeable. Like,
yeah,
it's
and that's the
not a
thing. He's just kind of
tumor.
a he's such a meme that you enjoy it, and he's less. Once again, he's more of an action hero stand-in character. It's just sort of like you're not here for Arnold as much as you're here for the Predator. Like that's the point, and therefore it really bugs me when they're trying to be like, oh, we're gonna give you a good female character. She won't just be a damsel in distress, and then they give us fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's like, but a girl, and it's like that's not a good character. That's like a like a C tier character or a D tier character at best. Like, and that's what's so disappointing about her in the remake is like, God, I was at least hoping that even if the gameplay sucked, at least the characters would be well written. And
Hmm.
like some are, I think that what's his face, Carlos, I think they handle him quite well.
Oh, have we not spoken about
But
this guy, Nikolai? Like that guy is such an evil wanker, and I love him for it.
he's an evil wanker. Not much depth to him.
I,
He's just sort of there to be hated. You
I
know,
know, but he has some good moments. Like when he's talking to Jill as she's hanging off, he's like, "I tell you what, you fight Nemesis and you defeat him. Maybe I don't need serum. Okay, good." And just kicks her into the pit.
yeah, no, he's fun to hate. He's got that Wesker energy of like, God, he's such a bastard, and that's fine. That's fun enough. But like, yeah. So I was disappointed with Jill's portrayal because she was actually like, when I imagine like, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. When I think of strong female characters
You think of
that are
Wonder Woman, right?
protagonists, no, um, no, I do not. I think of people who are flawed who and this isn't strong female protagonists. This is just strong protagonists. But they are people who are flawed, they have shortcomings, but they overcome those shortcomings to save the day or achieve their goals or do whatever they need to do. And that's what makes them impressive. That's what makes them fun to watch as protagonists. But with Jill and with a lot of characters like Jill, she doesn't act like this is ever a problem. She never acts scared of Nemesis in the remake. She acts annoyed. She's like, this shithead. You're still alive. God, you're inconveniencing
In a
me.
way, Leon
Like,
and Claire were the same with the Tyrant.
yeah, but like they had their moment. They were much more human in their reactions. Like they were like, holy shit. Like they had these moments where they're just like these throwaway lines when they're fighting zombies or lickers or anything else, where there's ambient dialogue of them being like, oh my god, like just oh fuck, like holy shit. Like they had these human reactions where like, oh my god, what's happening?
I think you
Like
also
they
need
had
to
enough.
remember as well, Jill's already experienced the majority of these monsters, zombies, hunters, because she's fought at Spencer Mansion. She witnessed so much. She fought a great white shark that birthed great white sharks.
Yeah, but like that's not gonna just like suddenly make you a hardened badass. Like her whole gimmick is that she's traumatized. Like they show that, like they hint at that a little in the remake, and it's very clear in the original that she's not having a good time.
Yeah, then suddenly she's
But
all zombie kicking ass, even after she just had a traumatic nightmare about zombies. So it's kind of like, you seem okay with
yeah,
fighting
and
them.
like in the original, she's just like she's having such a bad time, but it's impressive that she overcomes things. Like I'm very satisfied with her character in the original.
Even
So
every
it
time
was
she
shocking
defeated
and
Nemesis, it was always like a triumphant, like, yes!
yeah, like when she like it's super cheesy and dorky at the end when she kills Nemesis and is like, "I'll give you stars." Blah. And it's like obviously it's super, dorky,
It's super
but
90s.
super very much. But it's still satisfying for her as a character because it's like she's just this nice cop lady trying to do her best and the world is falling to shit around her. So for her to finally overcome this nemesis that has been hunting her, it's really meaningful. It's triumphant. It's like, damn, woman, that's like, damn.
In
I
a,
loved it. I loved it in the
in
original
a way, to
because it
bring
felt
up
like a real triumph.
in a way, to bring up the Resident Evil 2 remake, when you finally defeat the tyrant once and for all as Leon, it literally shows like a triumph of him. He shows him walking, but then it falls to his knees, and then he just topples over. And it was all like a yes. Because after how much shit
Yeah.
he gives you and you can't kill him, finally you're given the opportunity to kill him, and you finally do it.
Yeah.
Whereas Nemesis, in fact, you could just defeat Nemesis with a grenade. I never brought that up. Like, on many of my playthroughs, the moment he appears, obviously I didn't want to waste too many of my grenades because I wanted to save them for bosses. But when there was a moment I really wanted to just get to this area because I've already done my loot, I'm just like, oh fuck it, grenade.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, a grenade. How?
Right. And
Yeah.
that was another thing because, like, in the sequel, like, or not the sequel, the remake, it's so easy. They give you this like Dark Souls dodge that lets you avoid everything, and once you get the grenade launcher, it's like, okay, so this is just on easy mode now.
Actually,
Like, it's actually a joke.
I will say, if you do have the grenade launcher during the first Nemesis boss fight, he actually does dodge the grenade. So you have to
that's good.
You have to kind of fire it in a way that would surprise him, like either shoot him from the back, because if you try and shoot him in the front or the sides, I think there's actually one where he deflects the grenade and is just like, fuck off with that.
Yeah, but if you get a direct hit, you kill him.
Yeah.
So
At one point he's determined. Oh yeah, it's like he catches a rocket launcher so easily and looks at Carlos like, really? Just throws it away. Then the second shot, he's like, oh no, I didn't see him have another one.
Right? Like, that was a little weird. Like, couldn't you have caught the other one? Come on, dude.
I think maybe he was glowing in his head like, yeah, that looked good, Nemesis. That was really epic. What's that? Ah, shit, I should have seen that coming.
Yeah. So while the gameplay being, like, the main concept of Nemesis and him being your nemesis throughout the game, being cut is my biggest criticism of the remake. I also criticize how they handled Jill's character. But aside from that, I mean, the game looks great. The voice acting is great. The dialogue is well written. The final boss is appropriately epic in scale.
The soundtrack
Carlos
is definitely
is great.
another saving grace, man. Like the ambience of walking around the RPD, especially when there's no zombies about. The boss fight music is really epic, especially that final one. Like, Nemesis's final boss fight music is on a Sephiroth level. Like that is theory. Well, I mean, they both have chanting like Greek vocals in the background.
Greek?
Isn't it Greek that's in the background of Sephiroth's theme, or am I thinking of a different one?
It's Latin.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sean, if you're editing this, I can't remember if I'm going to get Sean to edit this. Quickly put that in the video just so I can see it later and find out that's true. Because I'm too lazy to Google things. It's like I have my phone here. I could quickly Google that, but I'm just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
But
I'll take when you translate the Latin and Sephiroth's song to English, it's so like great. It's such great lines. It's basically just like, you're fucked, the song. Like, it's just like, Despair has arrived, and his name is Sephiroth. And
Oh wow, is that the lyrics? That is epic.
That's the essence of it. Like I don't remember off the top of my head what the lyrics are, but that's the energy.
That's kind of what I got with Nemesis' final boss fight. And you know what? I get there's definitely some issues, but I definitely think maybe I'm popular, but I do think the good outweigh the bad for this remake. Obviously, I don't consider it better than the second remake, but there's more good than bad.
I would consider RE2 remake to be a 10 out of 10 game. I consider RE3 remake to be a 7 out of 10. But I consider the original RE3 to be like a 3 out of 10. So it's just one of those things where I consider the remake of RE3 to be a better game, but a bad remake. That's the essence of it. Like, RE2 remake was way better than the RE2, but also was a fantastic remake of RE2. RE3 is just a better game that isn't really... it doesn't really have the spirit of the original, even if it's a decent game. And I am very happy and very excited to see what they do with RE4 remake, because that game had some elements of it, RE4, that were so fantastic. And the only problems I had with it were like the controls, which obviously will be better in a remake.
Please
the
let me
hokey dialogue and cliches.
Like,
yeah, right. Jesus Christ!
I'm trying to run away
Tank
from
control.
Trying to run away from El Gigante, and it's like, oh, do you want to load your shotgun? You're gonna have to stand still and aim at him. It's like, just let me run and aim, or run and reload.
It's like, oh, you want to turn and look at something like that isn't directly behind you? Well, that will take 10 years.
There's definitely one thing I want them to remove from the remake of Resident Evil 4 that kind of pissed me off in the original. Please get rid of that double El Gigante boss fight when you're fighting that GIMP version of him.
Oh my god!
Like, you know which one I'm talking about.
I do.
Like,
I know.
Don't get me wrong. The idea of fighting two El Gigantes and having to use a lava pit to kill one, but then fighting the other one with... Okay, to be fair, it's kind of my fault in my playthrough because I didn't know I could jump on his back and start slashing at his tentacle thing.
Neither did I, actually. When I fought him originally.
But at the same time, it's kind of like fighting El Gigante like 4 times, where he doesn't even have that many different things. That if they do bring El Gigante back, obviously they're going to. He's kind of like iconic, like Nemesis in a weird way.
Yeah, maybe not to that same extent, but he's a big part. It is a big monster in the game.
Given the fact he's kind of in Resident Evil 5 and 6, he's definitely made a staple.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, in the 6th game, he's a bit more grotesque and stuff like that, and it's a different type of thing, but his animation's so identical to El Gigante. You'll know what I mean when you see the clips.
Gotcha. But yeah, and so with RE4, like, it had so many elements that I really loved, and a lot of elements that I thought really held it back. The plot, the characters, the writing, all of it, like, I'd be fine if they didn't include almost any of the original, like, in terms of the, like, writing style.
We can agree, though. We want Sans, aka the Merchant, now.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. 1,000,000%. Like, I want the same characters. I just want them done better. I want Sadler to be a character, not just a mustache twirling, wahaha, I'm a villain.
I don't know. I kind of like that.
No, you're part of the problem.
Come on, man, it's so great. He's like, oh, you may have escaped me now, Leon, but I'm going to release the new thing. It's so
you know
great.
Here, I'm going to be like so progressive. I'm going to be so equal to the genders. Resident Evil 4 Leon is just as bad as Resident Evil 3 Remake 2.
No!
Easily. They are.
He throws a
not characters.
And freaking stabs it into a midget's hand. That was
he's what an action hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't actually have a soul character thing to do. Like, dear God, I hate. I hate it. I hate it so much. And
actually, do you know, while we're talking about Resident Evil 4 Remake or Resident Evil 4 Leon, did you actually know his actor also voiced the Merchant?
I didn't. That's actually hilarious.
Yeah, so in a way, Leon is just talking with himself. Maybe that's maybe that's why people go to the theory that the merchant is just Leon. Yeah, so people think the merchant's not actually there.
Oh, Leon's just a nut job.
Yeah, but at the same time, then it's like, but then how the fuck does he get a rocket launcher?
Pulls it out of his ass. That's the only explanation.
At the same time, it's kind of funny to think about. Like while he's talking to the merchant, Ashley's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm talking to the zombie to get a machine gun."
Right. But yeah, so like, there's a lot of like, there's so much about RE4 that's iconic and innovative and like groundbreaking, and I hope they bring that stuff into RE4 Remake. But there's tons of stuff that I'm happy for them to leave on the cutting room floor. Like, I don't need that. I do not want RE4 Remake to be a hokey action game that has like witty one-liners and mustache twirling villains. I want real people, real characters, real plots, real drama. That's what I want. I want Leon to be a good character because he's a good character in RE2 Remake, and I don't want them to ruin that. So yeah, that's what I want. In my case,
I just want the game to be fun. That's all I ask.
Yeah. It's like, and like, don't get me wrong, if you like the hokiness, you like the one-liners and the action movie cliches, the original RE4 is not going anywhere. They're fine. Every time a new game system is invented, they port RE4 original to that console because people are obsessed with this game.
Now that you mention that, do you know what? I can actually imagine myself being that sort of person. It's like, right, I fancy Resident Evil 4. Do I want to play the action one or the more slower-paced horror one? So I guess that would actually be kind of interesting. In fact, do you know what? Yeah, maybe do something different with Resident Evil 4. 'Cause, you know, maybe try and do like a proper continuation from the remakes.
Exactly. Okay. That's what I want. I don't want RE4 to just like totally disregard the tone of RE2 Remake and RE3 Remake. I want it to feel like this is a natural progression for Leon's character. I don't want it to feel like he just suddenly becomes Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yeah, and from what I hear, the rumors I've heard, obviously RE4 Remake's pretty far out still, but from what I hear, I think they are going to go in a more serious direction for the remake.
And you know what? I'm on board with that. In fact,
I am too.
And just like Jaru said, if people are like, "Oh, but I want Resident Evil 4 to be like the original," I was like, "Well, it's been ported like how many times, so you still got it." In fact,
yeah, and that's the thing. Of all the classic Resident Evil games, RE4 holds up probably the best of all of them.
Oh yeah,
like,
absolutely.
If you can overcome the control, it's a fun game to play through. It's a very video gamey kind of game. Like, it's fun. I liked it. Even with the wacky controls, I still had a good time. I still gave it an 8 out of 10.
Is it kind of actually funny to think about? You know how we were talking about the whole Nemesis being a proper Nemesis? It's kind of sad that the Chainsaw Man acted more like Nemesis than the remake did.
That's hilarious.
In fact, even the
Chainsaw Man.
In fact, even the Chainsaw Man kind of had a epic death. You're finding a minecart, you jump out, and he falls down a mine shaft and getting crushed by a minecart. That's kind of an epic end to a rival in a way.
Fair enough.
In fact, I would have gladly had him as a final boss over Salazar.
Jesus Christ.
He just turns into a giant chainsaw monster.
Dear God, you have to Indiana Jones run away from a giant mecha Salazar.
Oh, come on. I love that. I love that.
If that's in the remake, I am quitting this franchise.
No, that was
flat out.
In fact, before I even activated that section, after I did the puzzle and I jumped around his arms, I was like, that's going to start chasing me, isn't it? And then it immediately chased me. I was like, I knew it. And it was so
How did this fucking dude, this bastard, how did he build a giant mecha version of himself in this Victorian era castle? What is happening? God. I
don't know what's more entertaining, the fact I love that, or the fact that you're getting crazy mad over it.
It's so dumb. What is happening? You used to be a dignified franchise. What is happening? So yeah, if you like that stuff, the original's there. And you know what? It's aged decently well. If you have nostalgia goggles, it's aged even better. It's a 10 out of 10 if you have nostalgia goggles. So
didn't that game
go
also
enjoy
win...
your
I mean,
mustache twirling giant mecha bullshit. Like,
not that the Game Awards are hold up to high regard this day and age, but didn't Resident Evil 4 actually win Game of the Year?
Well, the Game Awards, as we know them, didn't exist at the time of Resident Evil 4's release.
No, they've been around since 2000. In fact, one of the first ever games that won Game of the Year was Halo Combat Evolved.
Game of the
Obviously, they're not as mainstream. They weren't as mainstream, but they like the ones that we're more familiar with were around. It's just that games at that time weren't seen as a big mainstream thing.
The Game Awards have been around.
Actually, I can't remember who won the last Game of the Year.
2019's Game of the Year.
No, 2020. I can't remember which won that year.
Let's see. Game of the Year, Last of Us Part 2.
Wow, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Eesh.
It was meme to Hell and Beth that they won like every award.
Oh wow. I mean, this just goes. I'm not really that into the Game Awards because even though I'm just like.
So, the Game Awards has only been around since 2014.
Oh really? Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I really thought
so. Like, there have been other Game Award places and people and organizations. So yeah, like there were people who were giving out quote unquote Game Awards, but the Game Awards that everyone tunes in to watch have only been doing it since 2014.
Anyway, so I think
but
have you finished your opinion about Resident Evil 4 remake?
Yeah, and so overall, R3 Remake, 7 out of 10 game. It's fine. It's fun. If you like it, kudos. I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity, but you know what? You can't hit them all. Capcom's kind of been godly lately, so I'll forgive them for a few boo-boos here and there.
A few boo-boos, you know? I'm kind of in the same boat as you in terms of like... I mean, I'm definitely more interested now knowing that it was a different company that made Resident Evil 3's remake. But at the same time, I still like it. Nemesis was still interesting up until the boss fight of it. Now, in terms of Resident Evil 4's remake, I'm not going to go into a big discussion because honestly, Jaru's angers with a lot of the things the original did is entertaining enough.
And, you know, again, it's fine if in the original. I just don't want it in the remake.
In terms of the remake, one, I'm not really sure. I'm looking forward to seeing Chainsaw Larry again. That was the nickname I gave him.
Of course.
I mean, if they can make him scary, like I would love it if they kind of made him scary. Like I don't know, surprise me, not give some dramatic cutscene where some random zombie's like, "Don't worry, guys, I got a chainsaw. I'll kill this cop." You know, I like it. Like I'm just playing the game, I'm just walking, and suddenly, as I'm approaching the door, a chainsaw just cuts it down, and he just kicks in. And it's like, whoa, okay. Like if they do that for a remake, that would be sick. In fact, I want more monster reveals to be within the gameplay, not through cutscene. The only time I think that was an exception was with the Hunter, because you know the way they did it was iconic to its first reveal. But just like when you ran into the Lickers in the remake third game, it was surprising because they just jumped out of nowhere. Like I remember getting jump scared by a Licker, because I'm just walking to the security room, you know, and it's just there by the door, just waiting for me, and that scared me because it's like, oh crap, I forgot about you. And the same with the Tyrant from the second remake, you know, no dramatic cutscene or anything like that. Just, oh shit, this guy that can lift up a helicopter is now chasing after me. So, I would like them to do more monster reveals like that for the fourth remake. I mean, the other thing I also kind of want, I really hope they kind of have the inventory management that they had in the original.
You liked it or you didn't like it?
I liked it, and I hope they keep it, because don't get me wrong, I get why.
Yeah, I actually did too.
Like, okay, I get why they went back to the original in number 5 and number 6, but it was so unique in the fourth game because you had to actually be careful because you could carry a whole shit ton of guns. You just had to. It was like a Tetris sort of thing where it's like, right, if I put
it was like a fun little mini game. Like it was fun.
Like it was even fun to sort of like, right, my health kit will be at the bottom right, and the herbs will be in the middle. My ammo will be just roughly in the middle. Shotgun at the top, sniper down the middle slightly. And obviously, I think they did kind of hint. Resident Evil 8 is going to have a currency, so maybe the merchants. Am I going to see Sans again, maybe? I hope so. The reason I nicknamed him Sans is because he just appears anywhere. Just...
Lol. That's hilarious.
That's why I kind of nicknamed him Sans in my playthrough. Which, if you guys haven't seen, you should definitely go check it out. There's a link in the description below. Obviously, I want the merchant there, and I kind of hope they do keep his attitude like, got a lot of good things, stranger. I don't know what I liked about Sans, the merchant. See, I've called him Sans so much, even though that's not his canon name, it's just integrated in my brain. Obviously, I want the merchant, and yeah, just like you said, maybe give more depth to the villains. As much as I did like the whole James Bond, like, I'll get you next time, Leon, next time. Giving the characters more depth, just like they did in the remakes, could make them more interesting. Like, I would actually love to see Salazar get pissed off that Leon is just somehow avoiding all these monsters. Like, I'd love to see him get angry and just kill one of his minions just out of pure rage. Showing the monster side of him. Because even upon death, he didn't really seem to mind the fact that, his entire kingdom's gotten destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, I would be pissed off. Like, dude, I've literally thrown 2 giant men at you. A lizard monster, a shark, my freaking mutating chieftain, a freaking transformer statue. Yet you're still alive. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, dear God. Yeah, Leon's invincible in that game, and like it's just as bad as RE3 Remake. Fucking chill. Like I'm equal to the genders. God damn it! I know. I recognize bullshit when I see it.
So there you go, people. He's not being sexist. He knows plenty of women.
I didn't claim that.
I don't know why I did. I don't know why I did a Trump voice.
No comment.
We'll make Resident Evil great again.
Oh no!
What have I done? Okay, yeah, I don't know what I've done. So, yeah, that was the start of me and Jaru just talking about monsters and I guess the monster games. At some point, we're definitely going to talk about more Resident Evil. I would love to do a full discussion about Resident Evil 7 when I finished it. Resident Evil 8 as well, because, okay, believe it or not, Jaru, I'm not one of the perverted people that's interested in this whole vampire lady. I've only just recently seen people going crazy about it.
Yeah, I don't give a single flying fuck about giant vampire woman.
Yeah. So I mostly want to talk about, because this game's obviously going to be a continuation of Ethan's story. I even just recently found out Chris is in it and he's going to be a somewhat villain. And actually,
we don't really know enough about the story
actually,
to judge who's
though,
what.
I have played, since the parts I have played Resident Evil 6, you kind of actually do see him slowly become a villain. So I will say, Chris's campaign's actually been the most interesting so far. In terms of, like, Chris's story. Obviously, you didn't play Resident Evil 3's remake, so maybe look up the stories of the number 6. Like, watch the campaign. Especially Chris's stories. His one's actually really interesting so far.
You want to hear some of the campaigns in RE6 are halfway decent. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's only some of them that I get kind of...
What you wanted for Jill, Chris is actually going through PTSD and depression because he's lost so much to Umbrella.
Yeah.
So he's not the half badass that Leon is, whereas Leon's still relatively the same in Resident Evil 6. Even after the president died, he's still like, I'm gonna kick your ass. No joke, he held up the jaws of a zombie shark. I'm not kidding you. With his legs. With his fucking legs.
I recall. He's ridiculous.
He freaking held up a shark's jaw with his legs and it's just like, I'm gonna shoot your eye.
It wasn't even just a shark, it was a giant zombie shark. It's like, what the fuck? How?
With hands, actually.
He's not a super soldier. What is happening?
So, I guess we'll wrap up this first Bill and Jaru monster discussion. Still a work in progress. Up. Resident Evil 3's remake. We both have some good things about it, but we also both have some mixed opinions on it. Resident Evil 4's remake. We're both sort of looking forward to it, but we're also a bit skeptical.
Oh, I'm very optimistic. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think it will be entertainingly bad or one of the best games ever made. One or the other. There's not much in between.
I mean, given the fact it hasn't even released, because they were going to try and do it yearly with the remakes, I think. But thankfully, I think
Oh
after
God.
Resident Evil 3's remake, they kind of learnt their lesson. They're like, let's actually work on this game.
Yeah, let's give it a lot more care.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're still, well, I mean, they're about to release it. Resident Evil 8 obviously was in development for a long time, so, you know, 4's kind of just been that sub-project at the moment, but now that 8's coming out, that's going to be their main focus, I guarantee.
Oh yeah, once 8 is officially out, RE4 Remake is going to be their next big thing, and I'm honestly probably more excited for RE4 Remake than I am for RE8. But that's mostly because I'm not super interested in RE. I'm not super interested in Ethan as a character.
I think the whole idea of Ethan, he's meant to be you, but at the same time they've given him like a girlfriend that you're trying to save, and really, I don't really care about him.
Yeah, but he also is like, he's also kind of like got a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a Leon-esque, I'm a badass attitude that I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I get you. So we'll wrap up this with, yeah, we're looking forward to Resident Evil 4's remake, and who knows, we'll talk about more monster discussions in the future. I definitely want to start getting into SCPs like Jaru has.
Oh man, eventually I'm gonna make a video that's just ranking 100 SCPs. It's gonna be great.
Ooh, I look forward to that. So thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed what you saw here, share the video around and get the channel growing. Jaru, outro.
Oh dear God, I haven't done this in forever.
No pressure.
Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.
Mr. X is sexier than tall vampire lady.
Oh, dab.